And good afternoon. My name is Ryan Belmore. It is Tuesday, August 1st, just shortly after 1:30 p.m. to give a little timestamp here. And Mr. Frank Brosich joins me. Frank, how are you?
I'm doing fine. How are you, Ryan?
I'm doing all right. It has been a busy day. I encourage everybody to head to whatsupnuke.com and see all the latest conversations we're having. Not only are we talking to candidates, but earlier today I had the pleasure of having Governor McKee as well as Mayor Tsai and the superintendent talk all about education in the great city of Newport. So encourage everybody to head over and listen to that 45-minute conversation. It was really good, and you and I can catch up on that later, Frank.
Sounds good.
We're back on conversations with the candidates. We have a couple more to go this week. We've been chatting with all of the candidates for Rhode Island's first congressional district that want to take this opportunity to tell the voters who they are, and we thank all of them who have done that because it's important to do. We have 7 or 8 out of the 12 Democratic candidates sitting down with us. We have not heard back from the other 4 or 5, and we have not heard back anything from the Republican candidates. Enough of that. Let's talk to the candidates who do want to join us and chat with us. And today it is Walter Berbrick. And Walter, how are you?
Good, Ryan. How's it going?
It's going good. And welcome, and we thank you for taking the time. We know you are busy. Let's start with first of all, your website is your name. That is a good one to put out there. So we're going to hit on a lot today, but we're not going to be able to hit on everything that you stand for or that you think is an issue or priority. So walterberbrick.com for those who might be listening. I'll also put it on the bottom of the website here. Why don't we start out with just give us your background? What do you want people to know about yourself?
Yeah, well, first of all, thanks, Ryan and Frank, for the opportunity. You know, I'm a Navy veteran, proud father, lucky husband, and a life Democrat, and I'm running for Congress to continue serving this country and community I love. You know, I grew up humble beginnings, right? I grew up washing dishes in my family's restaurant, a restaurant that my grandfather opened just after serving in World War II. And our restaurant supported my grandparents, my parents, my brother and I. My father cooked full time, turned wrenches on weekends. My mother was the cashier full time, and she worked part time at a nursing home and remote clinic. So, but it was growing up in that environment, and my grandparents and parents, they taught me firsthand the values of hard work, of community and service, and those are the same values that inspired me to a life of public service, and the same values I'll bring with me to Congress. And after the 9/11 attacks, I graduated from St. Peter's University and joined the Navy, which took me to Rhode Island, and actually in Newport, almost 20 years ago, without any money in my pocket, any political connections. And as you might know, as an enlisted sailor, you're not making much money, just enough to put some gas in the tank. And so I bartended at night and went to school at night as well over at Salve to earn my master's. And it was working in the restaurant industry in downtown Newport where I met my amazing wife and where we began to raise our family. And it's, and so as fast forward as a naval intelligence officer here at the Naval War College, and then transitioning to the reserves, I managed, some of our classified intelligence programs, but also worked mostly on counterterrorism. And for the last 15 years, I've had the honor of serving in federal service to keep Americans safe. And as a professor at the U.S. Naval War College, I taught our nation's leaders and brought leaders from across our government, across the military, the interagency, the intelligence community, and across the world to analyze threats, but also to develop real solutions to keep Americans safe. And from authoritarian governments, but also militaries and climate change. And while working full time, I earned my doctorate from Northeastern University in Boston because I wanted to learn and better understand how laws and policies can help people in need. And my work on climate change actually brought me to the State Department, where under Secretary John Kerry, under President Obama, and it was during the U.S. chairmanship of the Arctic Council. And so I worked alongside just really an incredible team, developing and implementing U.S. foreign policy to improve the living conditions and economic conditions of our coastal communities, to increase awareness on climate change, but also to protect our world's oceans. And it was that work that also then led me to the Pentagon. Actually, during COVID, I would travel back and forth to spend Tuesdays through Thursdays in DC, Monday through Friday here, or Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday up here. And I was asked by the Secretary of the Navy to develop and roll out the Department of the Navy's first strategy for the Arctic region, which really set a new course for the Navy and Marine Corps to enhance their force posture, to strengthen cooperation, and to build a more capable naval Arctic force. And one of the most gratifying ways I've had the opportunity to serve Rhode Islanders is as a community volunteer leader with the American Red Cross. And not too long ago in 2019, I helped deliver food and shelter to many of our Newport residents who were impacted by the gas leaks. And then more recently had an opportunity to lead and serve and provide COVID-19 vaccines to residents in both Providence and Pawtucket. And so, running for Congress certainly wasn't in the plans for me, but I've had friends, leaders in Washington, many throughout Rhode Island, turn to me and say, "Hey, you should run for Congress." And I said, my initial reaction, honestly, was, "How about run from Congress?" Like, I can't stand politics because it's just so polarizing and frankly, just so petty. And then, the more Rhode Islanders I spoke with, the more, I learned three things. I learned, people are struggling, which I learned firsthand through my work with the Red Cross. I learned that Rhode Islanders are hungry for change, and they're also hungry for someone who's different. And folks are frustrated. And it's the same frustration that I've observed and heard over the last 3.5 months on the campaign trail from Woonsocket down to Newport and Jamestown. And it's that same frustration and fear that I have as a Navy veteran, as a husband, as a father, but also as a proud Rhode Islander. Because people are frustrated, right? They're frustrated because our economy isn't working for working families.
So Walter, let me kind of break in and tell me what your 5 top priorities are.
Yeah, number one, it's rising costs, right? Tackling rising costs. And my number one priority is building a stronger middle class and a strong middle class. And in Congress, I'm going to work to use every tool at my disposal to do that, to lower costs for hardworking families, for our seniors, for our veterans, and for our small businesses. And look, as a middle class family, we live paycheck to paycheck, and it's becoming harder and harder for so many Rhode Islanders, right, to live today, but also to save for tomorrow. It's hard to get to the middle class. How are you
going to do
it? And as we're learning today, it's harder to stay there. And I think there's a few ways that we can do this, Ryan. I think we can. Number one, I think it starts with providing folks an opportunity to grow and expand their small businesses. If you think about, over 58% of Rhode Islanders are employed by small businesses. So I think there's an opportunity here to really help small businesses grow and for folks to start their own small business. One of the other big ways, having the chance to talk to business owners in Newport, Jamestown, across the state, but especially in Newport. One of the biggest barriers, and as you likely know, like you and your folks in Newport know, is housing, right? Affordable housing. And it's one of the biggest barriers that's preventing our hospitality industry, our service industry, from growing and from getting the workers that they need, especially during the summer months. So that's number one. Number two is restoring Roe v. Wade, and making it the law of the land once again. And, I believe, no elected leader or insurance company, for that matter, should ever help or make a decision for a woman on her body. And, those decisions should be made by a woman and her doctor. And so the fact that our daughters and granddaughters have less rights than their mothers and grandmothers, it's disturbing and it sickens me. So that's number two. Number three is ending gun violence in America. More kids in America every day are killed by guns, and it's a national crisis. And as a father of 2 school-age children, I often think about whether or not my kids are going to come home safe. So many parents, teachers, students have shared that with me as well. And so for me, as a Navy veteran, I understand the responsibilities that come with handling firearms, handling assault weapons, being trained on them. But I also understand and know the impacts that these assault weapons have. And so, I fundamentally believe that that assault weapons have no place on our streets and they belong on the battlefield. So that's number three. Number four is tackling our climate crisis. And, it's an existential threat to our economy, our environment. We're seeing it, right here on Aquidneck Island and across Newport. And it's something I've been tackling my entire career at the Naval War College, at the State Department, at the Pentagon, locally with the American Red Cross, all in an effort to help, bring people together, reach common ground so that we can, deliver real results for Rhode Islanders. And, that's, looking at, rounding out kind of your top five there, it's about defending democracy, not only right here at home, but abroad. And I think, we're seeing, right-wing Republican extremists rip away the very freedoms I spent the last 2 decades defending. And I think one of the big things that we can do better is making sure that every American has to make voting simpler and more accessible for all Americans. So that's the top five.
Walter, we've talked to a couple candidates and a lot of their priorities always end up close to the same. If you read some recaps of the forums that have been had, it says, the Democratic Party, for the most part, some would say, or, all the candidates for this would say many of them have similar priorities. With that said, I'm wondering, what sets you apart and what will make you effective with following through on those priorities?
Yeah. I'm the only candidate in this race who has spent their entire career in public service, 10 years in the Navy, 15 years at federal service as a civil servant. And so I'm ready to serve and fight for you day one. And that really comes down to my experience, right? I'm the only veteran in the race, the only candidate who has worked under across administrations, under both Republican and Democrat, right? As a civil servant, you serve at the pleasure of whoever's in charge. But you swear an oath not to a president, but you swear it to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And one of the greatest lessons I've learned that really, across federal service, across the military, right, is that issues matter and people matter. And if you put people first, if you put mission first, you'll almost always achieve what you want to achieve. And I think Congress has really lost that. Congress has lost servant leaders who understand what it means to serve, what it means to sacrifice, what it means to put the country and people over party and politics. And that's what I've done my entire career. And that's what I'm going to continue to do as your representative in Congress.
Frank? Yeah, it's okay. Frank's all frozen up.
Do you feel that the lack of creates?
Frank, you have to say that
okay?
again. I think you're freezing up, Frank. Say it again.
Well, try this. Is this working?
Yep, go ahead.
Well, I'll ask my question, and if it works, it's great. Your lack of political experience and legislative experience, do you see that as as at least creating a significant learning curve for you if you're elected to Congress?
I don't. I've had the opportunity in this job to brief and actually bring together members of Congress from both sides of the aisle over the last 15 years at the Naval War College. And yes, it's true, I don't have legislative experience. But what's also true is that, passing bills is about bringing people together. It's about bringing people together from different ideologies, different backgrounds to reach common ground and consensus, right? And to deliver real results and to solve real problems. And look, this job is about building bridges. It's about bringing people together. And that's all I've done in the Navy, bringing the Navy and Marine Corps together. It's all I've done, bringing the entire, all our services together, the interagency together, our intelligence community together, countries from around the world together. And it's bringing people together to solve complex problems and deliver, real results, real solutions, tangible solutions that actually impact and influence real policies, real strategies, real programs, what capabilities our military buys and doesn't buy, right? And so I've spent my entire career solving problems from the local level to the global level. And I think that's what really sets me apart. Despite not having that legislative experience, it's about bringing people together to come to common ground for the common good.
How have you been connecting with voters, and what have you been hearing out there on the trail?
Yeah, it's been an incredible experience over the last, 3.5 months. And, it's just been so rewarding to the most rewarding part of this entire effort and this entire journey is speaking with voters, from Woonsocket down to Jamestown, and door knocking, calls, meeting folks at their doorsteps, in their at their kitchen tables. And one of the biggest things that I'm hearing, it really boils down to the economy. And I spoke with a woman today, and it's something that I knew firsthand, having our own children, but it was that the cost of healthcare, the cost for working families, and our premiums, or when you come home after you bring your newborn home, and then a few weeks later you get a bill in the mail for 15 grand for being at the hospital to deliver your child. And so, right, this isn't sustainable, right? I mean, from healthcare and housing to childcare to college, I mean, the list goes on and on. And so the economy is one of the biggest issues I'm hearing across our district.
So here's where I get confused, because I hear that from everybody, and yet when I hear about national polls and people say the economy is a problem, but when it comes to their own personal finances, their own personal economic conditions, I think it's something. I think the last poll I saw, like 71% of the people felt that they were personally in a decent economic position. I'm not sure how much, and it's my question to you, how much of it is real and how much of it is imposed by the politicians who keep telling us that the economy is bad.
I think it's very real. I mean, I know we're feeling it, right? I mean, there's again, it's one of the biggest issues that I've heard across, from recent graduates to folks, in their 30s and 40s, mid-career folks, to our seniors. And so I think it's a very real issue. And I also think that, look, I don't think we're in the clear right now in terms of impending recession. And it's something that we need to be mindful of. And it's one of the biggest priorities that I'll have if having the honor to get to Congress, is making sure that we don't fall back into a recession. And so, look, I mean, our economy today, it's not working for working families, right? And so I'm going to be laser focused on building a strong middle class. It's about, expanding the middle class. It's about creating good paying jobs. It's good paying union jobs. It's about, again, solving the housing crisis for our restaurant and hospitality industry can continue serving folks that come through and to grow our local economy. And so, and small businesses, as I mentioned before, is such a big thing, and being able to provide Rhode Islanders equal opportunity to have access to capital, to grow their own small businesses, start their own small businesses. So to me, that's one of the biggest things in our seniors, right? I mean, the cost of healthcare, as I said before, not only impacts our middle class or career folks, but I mean, take, for example, my own parents. Before they jumped on the Affordable Care Act, right? They were paying over $2,000 in premium a month between the two of them. They had close to $1,000 in paying for prescription drugs. Right? That's almost a mortgage payment. And these are folks who spent their entire 30, 40 years as small business owners working behind the grill and the cash register. And so, it's not sustainable, and we've got to do better, and we've got to elect folks who understand the urgency of these problems, but also have the vision, the courage, and the experience to do something about it.
Walter, I've been asking the question, just, it's kind of a dream fantasy question, but you could put a note in every registered voter's pocket prior to the primary coming up here in just about a month. Holy cow. Yeah, you could put we've been talking about this, it seems like, for years, but I know it hasn't been that long. But you can put a note in everybody's pocket that tells them one thing about you, that sets you apart, why they should check that box next to your name. It appears in their pocket on primary day morning. What's it going to say?
I think it's going to say vote Berbrick for Congress, #1 on the ballot, and #1 in your hearts. And when you get to the polls, in all seriousness, it's about, folks should know that I will always listen. I'll always listen to you. I'll always be honest with you, and I'll always fight for you, whether you voted for me or not.
Are you supporting Joe Biden?
You broke up. Sorry about that.
Are you supporting President Biden?
Yes.
Doesn't sound enthusiastic. Are you
No,
enthusiastic?
I didn't. No, no. Of course, I support him. I didn't hear what you said.
No, it didn't. It didn't sound. I said it didn't sound like you were enthusiastic in your support, and I think that's one of the latest polls that I see, where there are a lot of Democrats who would be satisfied with President Biden but weren't enthusiastic about it. I'm wondering where you fall on that.
Yeah, Frank. Look, I 100% support President Biden. We have made extraordinary progress as a country under President Biden. He's passed 3 major bipartisan pieces of legislation. But look, we've got a lot of work to do. And the Democratic Party, right, needs strong leadership, especially at the top, if we're going to take back the House, if we're going to win the presidency in 2024, and if we're going to, bring strong bipartisan leadership to Washington. And we, and so that's really where I fall on that. But we also have to look towards the future. We also have to look towards, who's going to lead our country in the years and decades ahead. And so the party's got to think a lot about that and make sure that we put together a strategy that can do, as I mentioned, take back the House, bring new reforms to the Supreme Court, et cetera.
I haven't gone and checked everybody's bios, but you've said a couple times that you're the only candidate with military experience, so I'm going to trust you for a minute here. But why does military experience matter, or how is it different? Why should folks consider a candidate that has that experience?
Yeah, and it goes back to what I mentioned before. It's about serving. It's about putting people first. It's about putting our country first over party and politics. It's about having the opportunity to serve in our military. Right, it teaches you those values and ingrains those values of honor, courage, and commitment. And I think a good example, right, is the Supreme Court, right? I mean, over the last several years, we've seen an outright assault on the Supreme Court, and we need to rebuild trust in our government, in our institutions, in our processes, and in the people that we elect, and that goes for the Supreme Court as well, right? And it's about we've seen a very cohesive, comprehensive, aggressive strategy from right-wing Republicans to rip away the very rights that I spent the last 2 decades defending: rights on reproductive rights, LGBTQ rights, voting rights, environmental regulation, gun safety. The list goes on. And so it falls on Democrats and, frankly, Republicans as well, who actually genuinely care about the future of our country to solve this problem in a bipartisan way. And so,
do you support term limits for members of both the Senate and the House, as well as the Supreme Court? And second part of that, do you think that Congress ought to be developing ethics regulations for the Supreme Court?
So the first part of your question, I do support term limits for members of Congress on both the House and the Senate, and I'm open to the those term limits for the Supreme Court. It's a little different. But I've thought more about the term limits for Congress, because I fundamentally believe that every generation has the obligation to pass the baton off to the next generation. And your second question, repeat the second question. Ethics, yeah, Supreme Court. So look, I mean, as a member of our armed forces and being a federal civil servant, I've had to live by a code of conduct, right? And that starts with integrity. And that's why, at the top of the list of, I think, the 14 principles.
So my question wasn't whether or not there should be ethics. My question was whether or not Congress should vote and impose those ethics on the Supreme Court, or whether the Supreme Court ought to be generating it itself.
No, I'm speaking. I believe that the Supreme Court should have a code of ethics, a code of conduct, just like we have in the military, just like we have in federal service. And it's a code of conduct that I think that Congress can help develop and in a bipartisan way. And a good example, right? The bill Senator Whitehouse introduced last month, I think, is a much needed step in the right direction. These are the most powerful judges in America, yet they still aren't required to even follow the basic ethical standards, right? And so this has got to change.
I'll steal Frank's question on this one. I think I'll summarize it probably a different way, but 435 members of Congress. Some believe, it's tough with how it's divided right now to make meaningful or effective change. How do you see with throwing your hand across the aisle? How do you see getting things done in such a big party with such almost 50-50 Congress?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest obstacles that I would face as a freshman representative, right, is number one is time. The fact that you're spinning up and doing this same exact process, running for 2024, so it doesn't really change. Oh, on top of that, trying to balance what you're elected to do, and that's serve Rhode Islanders. And so I think, number one, for me, it's about taking the time to listen and learn from my colleagues on both sides of the aisle and in both houses. Number two, it's about joining and serving on those committees and caucuses where we can bring real bipartisan change to Washington and to Rhode Island families. And number three, and what's really important here is for me to seek out and establish relationships with members of Congress who share whose states share very similar interests or concerns or values that we do here in Rhode Island.
How do you win?
How do you win? I think at the end of the day, it's about getting your name out there, getting your message out there, and making sure that every Rhode Islander knows who we are, what our message is. And it's about, at the end of the day, it's about being who, I'm not going to change who I am. And so it's about listening. It's about learning. It's about working hard. And I think Rhode Islanders know authenticity when they see it. And it's about being pragmatic and being principled. And I think that's the kind of leadership that we need in Washington.
People see this big slate of candidates started as 35, 20 Democrats. I've read some comments, and I only take them so far that are social media, but, some people saying, why can't they all just get behind one candidate? Any thoughts on that?
Well, I think everybody in this race fundamentally believes that they have a chance at winning, and I know we do. I mean, I resigned from 15 years of federal service without political connections, without personal wealth, without receiving corporate PAC money, because I fundamentally believe that I have an obligation to step up now, answer the call to service, and to continue fighting and serving our country and our community. And that's what I plan to do. And that's why I'm doing what I'm doing, because I fundamentally believe I have an obligation to step up now so that our kids and our grandkids have a better future.
Tell me about some of the stuff that we are going to find on your website and some of the things people should go on there and read. It's for those who may listen to this, it's walterberbrick.com, hisname.com.
Yeah, it's please check out our my story and my journey and what drove me to where we're at today. Please take a look at our issues and our priorities, and many of which you've heard today. And please, join our team. And I'm just so excited and very humbled by how many Rhode Islanders, have joined our team as volunteers, have helped us get on the ballot, and have donated their hard-earned dollars to help us get our message out and win this on September 5th.
And you talk about rising costs, rising seas, rising division on your website. We touched base a little bit on all of those, but was there anything that we did not get to talking about today that you wanted to bring up that's important?
Yeah, I think one thing that you mentioned very early on is that you had a conversation about education with yesterday, I believe, and so education is so important, right? And I'm the first in my family to graduate college. I'm the product of our public school system. My kids, even my K through 12, my kids are the same. It was public school teachers that inspired me to be a lifelong learner, inspired me to earn my doctorate, inspired me to become a career educator. And so I fundamentally believe that equal access to high quality education is the foundation of a strong democracy. And so education is so important. And I mean, just obviously Rhode Island has its own issues, but across our country, and that's going to be a priority of mine. We didn't talk about it, and it's actually not we don't get too much of it into our website, but it's something that I've been hearing quite a bit from folks across our district, and something that I'm really passionate about and want to help solve.
Let's make sure we mention any distinctions or any other folks that are supporting you. I know that the Moms Demand Action, let me try this, 2023 Moms Demand Action Gun Sense Candidate Distinction is one of the things that you have picked up.
Yep. Yeah. We're very honored to receive their distinction. Just last week, we extraordinarily grateful. We were just endorsed by Vote Vets, which is the first and largest progressive group of veterans across the country. And they've been very instrumental in helping veterans get elected to Congress. And I hope I have that opportunity as well.
What do you love about Rhode Island? What keeps you in Rhode Island besides, let's take the family out of it or whatever it may be, but what about the state, the people?
Yeah. Well, honestly, Ryan, it's the people. I know you said aside family out of it, but even aside family, because that's where I met my wife and everything, but it's the people. And for me, the icing on the cake really was during COVID, where I had the opportunity to lead our vaccination support efforts with the Red Cross. And when asked to do that, I was taken aback because, there's so much that went into it. But at the end of the day, it was in these neighborhoods that I saw, the best of Rhode Islanders come out in the worst in times during COVID, and putting together volunteer teams who spend, regardless of their own, being impacted by COVID, but they volunteered their time and their efforts to help others get vaccinated. And honestly, it was one of the most incredible, gratifying ways to serve and just see the best in Rhode Islanders. So to me, it's all about people. Excellent.
It is walterberbrick.com. Walter, did we miss anything? Anything else you wanted to bring up?
I don't think so, but I really appreciate both you, Ryan and Frank, for the opportunity. Hopefully we get to have more of these conversations here in the near future. Encourage folks to check out our website, join our team. And I'm ready to hit the ground running on day one. And it would be my greatest honor to earn your vote on September 5th and to represent you in Washington. So thank you so much.
Of course. And we appreciate you taking the time. Very best of luck over the next couple of weeks. Just about a month from this weekend, we'll be heading to the polls to vote in the primary for Rhode Island's first congressional district. We wish you the very best of luck, Walter.
Awesome. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate you.
Thank you. That is Walter Berbrick. His website is walterberbrick.com. He is running for Rhode Island's first congressional district. If you're in Newport, Middletown, Portsmouth, Jamestown, pretty much east side of Rhode Island, you are in Congressional District 1. It is okay if you do not know what congressional district you live in, but you still have time to learn about it. You still have time to figure out which one you're in. And yes, you will be heading to the polls. I know it is a special election, but it is very important that you get out there and vote. This is an important seat, and it's important that you learn about the candidates that are running. You can go back and watch this video, listen to it, all available on whatsupnuke.com. We have these with all the candidates who have taken the time, and it should be noted that I don't want to encourage you to give more credit to the candidates that sat down with us for taking the time. But it is important to note that the candidates that took the time to sit down with us to share their background and their experience with readers is very important. They are making an attempt. So give them the time, listen to what they have to say, because they're putting themselves out there and sitting down and answering some questions with us. So that was Walter Berbrick, walterberbrick.com. And again, if you missed this one, you can find it on whatsupnuke.com. You can also listen to any other candidate interview, watch any other candidate interview, all available on whatsupnuke.com. Thanks for watching.